The lie was on page 82, Appendix C, a $5 million mirage tucked neatly between a grant for a vaccination program in Nigeria and funding for clean water wells in Peru. They thought I wouldn't notice. After all, to them, it was just paperwork. A final administrative hurdle before they could push me out the door. But in my world, paperwork is scripture. It's the binding promise between a donor's hope and a child's future, and I read every single word. That signature they needed, the one they thought was a mere formality, was about to become the most expensive one they never got. My name is Allison Boyd, and for 15 years, I was the conscience of the Sterling Foundation for Global Health. At 42, I had built the entire grant vetting process from the ground up. I was the one who made sure every dollar of our $300 million endowment was a force for good, not a victim of fraud. While our board members attended galas and accepted awards for their philanthropy, I was the one on a 3 a.m. call with a clinic in rural India, verifying supply chains. I was the one who spotted the ghost charity in South America that almost siphoned off $2 million 3 years ago. I wasn't just an employee, I was the guardian of our mission. Then Chloe Sterling arrived. 27 years old, armed with a fresh master in marketing and the unshakable confidence that comes with being the founder's only daughter. Her official title was Director of Strategic Initiatives. Her actual qualification was her last name. She walked into our headquarters like she was surveying a property she'd just inherited, her eyes scanning over the photos of the hospitals we'd built and the children we'd saved with a detached aesthetic appreciation, as if they were merely part of the decor. Edward Sterling, our founder and a man I had respected for over a decade, introduced her during our quarterly all-hands meeting. His pride was a tangible thing, a heavy cloak he draped over his daughter's shoulders. Chloe will be joining us to help modernize our outreach, he announced. She'll be co-leading our biggest initiative yet, the Children's Reach Initiative. Allison, I want you to give her your full guidance. Guidance? The word felt wrong. It implied a student willing to learn, not a successor being positioned to take over. Chloe's handshake was firm but brief, her manicure immaculate. Her gaze flickered past me, already assessing the room's power dynamics. It's amazing to finally meet you, she said, her voice smooth and practiced. Dad has told me you handle all the bureaucratic side of things. Bureaucratic paperwork. 15 years of safeguarding a global mission, and I was the bureaucracy lady. I manage fiduciary accountability and program verification, I corrected, my voice even. I ensure our partners are legitimate and that our funding achieves its intended impact, protecting the foundation and our donors from risk. She smiled, a bright, empty gesture, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. Right. Well, I think we can definitely streamline that. We need to be more agile, more trust-based. Less red tape. Less red tape. The same red tape that had saved her father's foundation from international scandal and financial ruin. Over the next few weeks, Chloe's version of agility revealed itself. She began a campaign of small approvals for trendy nonprofits she found on Instagram, organizations with great branding but no verifiable track record. She called it influencer marketing. When I insisted on our standard multi-week vetting process, she sighed dramatically in meetings, calling my diligence a bottleneck to innovation. The exclusion was subtle at first. I was accidentally left off an important email chain with a major donor. My annual field visit to our partners in East Africa, a trip I'd made every year to conduct in-person audits, was canceled. Chloe insisted a video call was more cost-effective and time-efficient. In strategy meetings, my data-driven concerns were brushed aside in favor of her fresh perspective. I was being systematically erased, my authority chipped away piece by piece. The final, decisive blow came on a Tuesday. I was summoned to a meeting with Edward and our head of HR. The room had the sterile, somber feel of a pre-arranged execution. Allison, Edward began, his expression a performance of paternal concern. We feel you've been carrying an immense burden for a long time. Perhaps you're nearing burnout. I'm managing my workload perfectly fine, Edward, I said, knowing my performance was irrelevant to this conversation. Of course, he said, but we're thinking about your well-being. The board has approved a special leadership sabbatical for you. 6 months, fully paid, time for you to recharge, to come back refreshed. 6 months. Just long enough for Chloe to take full control, to cement her power, and to steer the foundation toward her vision of high-gloss, low-accountability philanthropy. Long enough for the launch of the Children's Reach Initiative, a $50 million project I had spent 2 years architecting. I saw the trap instantly. If I fought it, I'd be labeled difficult, ungrateful, a disgruntled employee. If I accepted, I'd be forgotten. So I chose a third path. That's incredibly generous, I said, my tone carefully neutral. I accept, but I have one condition. For the sake of my 15 years of responsibility to our donors, I must be the one to give the final sign-off on the annual impact report before I leave. It's my duty to see it through. Edward's relief was palpable. He saw it as a harmless request, the last act of a loyal soldier. Of course, Allison, it's only right, just a formality. A formality. He had no idea that in asking for that one last task, I wasn't closing a chapter. I was setting the entire board for the war to come. My last day arrived with a quiet, somber efficiency. My office, a space that held 15 years of memories, of late nights and small victories, was reduced to a few neat boxes. At 4:45 p.m., Chloe's assistant appeared at my doorway, holding a thick, bound document. The Sterling Foundation's annual impact report. Chloe said everything has been reviewed by finance, she said, avoiding my eyes. It just needs your signature. She placed it on my desk. The final act, the last piece of paperwork. I opened it, my muscle memory guiding my hand through the familiar sections. Program outcomes, financial statements, partner testimonials. It was all there. My signature would be the seal of approval, the verification that every number, every claim, every dollar was true. Then I turned to Appendix C, Section 4. The list of intermediary financial partners, and there it was, Global Outreach Innovators, a $5 million allocation for educational infrastructure development. A name I had never seen, a project I had never vetted. My heart went cold and still. I pulled up my personal database, the encrypted, offline ledger I'd maintained for years, my secret system of checks and balances. I typed in the name. 0 results. I ran a quick, discreet corporate registry search. Global Outreach Innovators had been incorporated 2 months ago in Delaware. The registered agent was the Sterling family's private attorney. It was a shell company. A $5 million hole punched directly through the heart of our mission. I checked the document's digital properties. The entry had been added by C. Sterling at 2:18 p.m. that very afternoon, long after the finance department had completed their review. It was a brazen, last-minute insertion, counting on me being too sentimental, too distracted, too defeated on my last day to notice. Chloe's assistant reappeared at my door. Is everything okay? Chloe needs to send this to the printers by 6. I looked up from the page, my expression calm. There appears to be a significant data inconsistency in Appendix C, I said, my voice steady. I can't possibly sign this today. I'll need to take it home to conduct a proper review. Her face drained of color. But the deadline, Chloe said. If Chloe wanted this signed today, I interrupted gently, she should have ensured it was accurate. Chloe herself stormed into my office moments later, her composure frayed. Allison, what is this? I need that report signed now. Our partners are waiting for it. I stood up, slipping the thick document and its single, crucial signature page into my briefcase. I snapped the latches shut. I understand the timeline, Chloe. Which is why I am taking my fiduciary responsibilities so seriously. You'll have my response on Monday. Monday? Her voice was a squeak of panic. That's unacceptable. I'm calling my father. Please do, I said, walking past her toward the exit. Tell him I'm protecting his legacy from his own daughter. As I walked out of the Sterling Foundation for the last time, briefcase in hand, I felt a strange sense of calm. The game had just begun. They thought they had pushed out the bureaucracy lady. They had no idea they had just armed the guardian, and I was taking the evidence with me. My phone began buzzing before I even reached the parking garage. Edward, HR, Chloe, I let them all go to voicemail. I had a long weekend ahead of me and a $5 million lie to dismantle piece by piece. The war wasn't over. It had just been declared. That weekend, my home transformed into a war room. The buzzing from my phone was a constant, desperate hum on the kitchen counter. I ignored it. Panic was their language, not mine. My language was precision. I spent Saturday methodically scanning every page of the annual impact report, creating high-resolution digital copies. I documented the forged entry for Global Outreach Innovators, highlighting the inconsistent font size, the way the line spacing was just slightly off. Then I moved on to my own files, my 15-year archive. I pulled the original project proposal for the Children's Reach Initiative, the one that detailed exactly how all $50 million were to be allocated. There was no room in it for a $5 million shell company. I compiled everything into a single, encrypted folder. I created a timeline, a meticulous log of events starting with Chloe's appointment and ending with her panicked demands in my office. Each entry was supported by a document, an email, or a calendar invitation. I uploaded a backup of the entire package to a secure cloud server, a digital dead man's switch. This wasn't just about one fraudulent entry anymore. This was about a pattern of negligence and a deliberate attempt to seize control and exploit the Foundation's goodwill. This was a story, and I was preparing to tell it with irrefutable evidence. Silence is a powerful weapon in a corporate crisis. They expect screaming, threats, lawyers. They don't expect a void. By Monday, their frantic calls and emails had subsided, replaced by an eerie quiet. They were gambling that I would do nothing, that their offer of a paid sabbatical was enough to buy my compliance. They assumed I had no move to make. The first crack in their fortress appeared on Wednesday in the form of an encrypted message from Ben Carter. Ben was a junior accountant, a quiet, brilliant kid who believed in the mission as much as I did. We worked closely on a few audits, and he respected my diligence. The message was short. They're telling everyone you signed and submitted the report before you left. Chloe is blaming a server glitch for the delay in distribution. Be careful. So the cover-up had begun. Chloe wasn't just a thief, she was an amateur. She was creating a trail of lies that would be comically easy to expose. I saved a screenshot of Ben's message and added it to my file. The real earthquake hit on Thursday. My phone rang with a number I recognized instantly. Dr. Alina Vance, the executive director of the MacArthur Health Fund. They were our largest single donor, a titan in the world of global health, and Alina was a force of nature. She didn't bother with pleasantries. Allison, Alina Vance, I'm hoping you can shed some light on a very peculiar situation. We were supposed to receive your foundation's signed impact report on Monday. We've received nothing but excuses about technical difficulties from Ms. Sterling. I chose my words carefully. Dr. Vance, as of my final day of employment last Friday, I had not signed the report due to significant discrepancies I discovered that required further review. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Discrepancies? That's interesting. Because this morning, in an attempt to placate us, Ms. Sterling sent my office a PDF of the signature page. It featured a very crude digital insertion of your signature. Our document verification software flagged it in seconds. Federal fraud. The little girl playing executive had just committed a federal crime. My mind raced, but my voice remained calm. I can state unequivocally that I did not sign that document, nor did I authorize anyone to use my signature in any form. I didn't think so, Alina said, her voice like ice. In my 20 years in this field, your name has been synonymous with integrity. Chloe Sterling has not. Thank you for your candor, Allison. We will be taking appropriate steps. The call ended. Chloe had overplayed her hand so badly it was almost tragic. She hadn't just tried to fool a partner, she tried to fool a titan with a forged check. The consequences would be swift and brutal. My plan now had a new, critical piece of evidence: attempted forgery. That evening, I made my first move. I drafted a simple, anonymous email from a secure address. I sent it to one person, David Chen, the lead independent director on Sterling's board. He was a retired federal judge, a man known for his unimpeachable ethics, the only board member I believed was truly immune to Edward's influence. The subject line was plain: an urgent matter regarding the annual impact report. The body of the email contained only 2 attachments: a scan of the original, untampered Appendix C from my private files, and a scan of the altered version Chloe had given me. I wrote no text. The documents spoke for themselves. The fuse was lit. All I had to do was wait for the explosion. It came on Sunday night. My phone rang. It was Edward Sterling. This time I answered. His voice, usually so full of commanding charm, was thin and strained. Allison, we need to talk. This has all been a terrible misunderstanding. Was it a misunderstanding, Edward? Or was it a $5 million theft orchestrated by your daughter? The silence on the other end was heavy with shock. He genuinely hadn't known the details. He had only seen the smoke, not the fire. She was just being ambitious, he stammered, trying to make her mark. Her mark is a forged document and a shell company, I said. The MacArthur Fund knows, and I suspect by now so does David Chen. His tone shifted from confusion to pure desperation. What do you want, Allison? Just tell me what you want. Name your price. The offer was as insulting as it was predictable. My price is the integrity of this foundation, Edward. A price your daughter was willing to sell for $5 million. You might want to have a conversation with her before the markets open tomorrow, and before your entire board does. I hung up. The next morning, the news broke on a Philanthropy Insider blog. Sterling Foundation Impact Report delayed amid rumors of internal turmoil. Hours later, the MacArthur Health Fund released a public statement. They were officially pausing all current and future funding to the Sterling Foundation, pending a full governance review. That was a $20 million vote of no confidence. At 10 a.m., my phone rang. It was David Chen. "Ms. Boyd," he said, his voice the calm, authoritative tone of a judge. "I received your email. I've also spoken with Dr. Vance. It seems we have a serious problem. The board is convening an emergency session on Wednesday. We need to know what you know. Officially." "Mr. Chen," I replied, "I am no longer an employee, but as a private citizen with a vested interest in the mission I served for 15 years, I would be happy to consult with the board." He understood immediately. I wasn't a whistleblower anymore. I was a key witness, and I was setting my own terms. "Dr. Vance feels the same way," he said. "She has asked to be included in our preliminary discussions. She believes, as do I, that you are the only one who can walk us through this mess." An alliance was forming. The Guardian, the Judge, and the Titan, and together we were about to take back the kingdom. Wednesday morning, I walked into the Sterling Foundation headquarters for the first time as a non-employee. The air in the lobby was thick with unspoken fear and frantic whispers. I was escorted directly to the boardroom on the top floor. I wasn't an outcast anymore. I was the main event. The room was a landscape of grim faces. The independent board members sat on one side, a jury assembled. Edward Sterling sat at the head of the table, looking 10 years older than he had a week ago, flanked by a team of stone-faced lawyers. Chloe was nowhere to be seen. She had already been suspended, a ghost already haunting the halls. On a large screen at the end of the room, Dr. Alina Vance's face was projected, her expression severe. David Chen gave me a slight, respectful nod and gestured to an empty chair at the center of the table, directly opposite Edward. I was not there as a subordinate. I was there as a witness. "Ms. Boyd," David began, his voice cutting through the tension. "The board has reviewed the preliminary information provided. We now need you to walk us through your findings." I opened my briefcase with deliberate calm. I laid out the original, unsigned annual impact report. Then I connected my laptop to the boardroom's main display. On the screen, 2 documents appeared side by side. "On the left," I said, my voice resonating in the silent room, "is Appendix C as it was reviewed and approved by the Finance Department. On the right is the version I was asked to sign on my final day." I used my cursor to highlight the entry for Global Outreach Innovators. The $5 million lie, glowing in damning yellow for all to see. This entity was inserted into the document after all financial oversight had been completed. It is a shell company, incorporated 2 months ago by the Sterling family's private legal counsel. Its purpose was to divert $5 million of donor funds. A wave of murmurs swept through the room. Edward's lawyer leaned in, whispering furiously to him. Edward finally spoke, his voice strained. "This is a grotesque misinterpretation. My daughter was exploring innovative, fast-track funding mechanisms. If Ms. Boyd had simply communicated her concerns through the proper channels, I cut him off, not with anger but with cold, hard fact. Communicate? I was being placed on an involuntary sabbatical, pushed out to make room for your daughter. My field visits were canceled. I was removed from key meetings. Which proper channel should I have used, Edward? The one that led to the HR department that was managing my exit? Or the one that led to the CEO who placed his unqualified daughter in a position to commit fraud?" The room fell silent again. My words hung in the air, irrefutable. Alina Vance's voice boomed from the screen. "And let us not forget the matter of the forged signature sent to my office, an act of federal fraud. The MacArthur Fund has lost all confidence in the current leadership of this foundation." David Chen looked at Edward. "The board has lost confidence, too." The vote was a formality. Edward Sterling was removed as chairman, effective immediately. He was offered a meaningless title of founder emeritus with no operational or governance role. Chloe Sterling's employment was terminated for cause, with a note in her file that the foundation would cooperate fully with any federal investigation. The Sterling dynasty was over. After Edward and his lawyers had filed out of the room, defeated, David Chen turned to me. "Allison, we need to salvage this. The report must be corrected and signed to restore donor confidence, starting with Dr. Vance. Will you help us?" "Yes," I said, "on one final condition." All eyes turned to me. "I want a formal letter of apology from Edward Sterling. not just to me, but to the staff, the board, and all of our partners. In it, he must acknowledge that his decision to prioritize family over fiduciary duty put this entire foundation at risk. He must acknowledge that my refusal to sign was an act of integrity that protected the mission, and he must state clearly that my sabbatical was, in fact, a constructive termination. One of the lawyers started to object, but David Chen raised a hand. "He'll do it, or what's left of his reputation will be gone forever. You'll have the letter by tomorrow." True to his word, the letter arrived in my inbox the next afternoon. It was everything I had asked for. A confession, a surrender, and my vindication, all signed in his elegant hand. I printed it out. Then I took a pen and finally signed the corrected, clean, and honest annual impact report. The $50 million initiative was saved. The foundation was saved. The following week, the new board, with David Chen as interim chair, called me to a meeting. They made me an offer: the CEO position, the corner office, the power to run the foundation the right way. I had been expecting it. And I had already made my decision. "Thank you," I said, genuinely grateful, "but I must decline." David looked surprised. "But why? You've earned it. This is your victory." "My victory wasn't about gaining a title," I explained. "It was about defending a principle. The trust that was broken here wasn't just between me and the leadership. It's a systemic issue. The foundation needs a completely fresh start." And frankly, so do I. I left them with a list of qualified candidates and walked away, not with bitterness, but with a profound sense of freedom. The story of the Sterling coup became a quiet legend in the nonprofit world. I was suddenly one of the most sought-after governance experts in the country. Recruiters called daily. But I was waiting for the right opportunity. It came in an email 2 weeks later, not from one foundation, but from a coalition led by David Chen and Alina Vance. They weren't offering me a job. They were offering me a calling. They had secured the initial funding to launch a new, independent organization, the Institute for Philanthropic Accountability. Its mission would be to act as a watchdog and a consulting body, an independent auditor that would certify nonprofits for integrity and operational excellence, giving donors a trusted seal of approval. They wanted me to build it and lead it. Today, that's where I am. I don't spend my days guarding the treasury of one foundation. I spend them teaching hundreds of them how to build their own fortresses of integrity. My story became my credential. The worst experience of my professional life became the foundation for the most meaningful work I have ever done. I turned my pain into a blueprint for prevention. I don't think about the Sterlings anymore. They are a footnote in a story that has become much larger than them. My story is in the faces of the young, idealistic leaders I train. It's in the stronger, more transparent organizations we help build. The unsigned document that started it all sits in a frame in my office. A reminder that sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to sign your name to a lie. The paperwork lady finished her filing, and she started a revolution.